so sorry I didn't hand it to you.
No, you're fine. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Cooper. Well, what I think is very interesting to note, first off, is the differences between Shannon and I's presentations here. So we're going to have a lot of similar notes, and the aesthetics of our presentations are completely opposite, I would say. So that breaks down pretty well the differences between us, but very excited to be here. Good afternoon, everybody. If you don't know me, again, my name is Cornelius. I do have a bachelor from Oklahoma State University. Go Pokes. I'm wearing some Go Pokes socks right now. Cooper hates it when I say Go Pokes, but that's all right. My minor was in architectural history and theory, if you didn't know that. So, without further ado, let's get into my lecture for today. This is the home insurance building. None of you are writing this down. What's going on? All right, so this was in Chicago, Illinois. Can anybody tell me who the architect was? No. Jenny. William LeBaron Jenny. Oh, man, okay, we got some work to do. All right, let's go to the next one. I'm just kidding. That's not what this is about. All right, I just wanted to see if anybody would get up and leave, but none of you did, so now I can go on. So, the AIS. Let's get a show of hands, please. How many of you care about the AIS as an organization? Oh, so many. Wow. For a long time, I thought that I cared about the organization too. During my presidency, I realized that I don't care about the AIS at all. That's the end of my speech. Thanks, everybody. There's more. But that can't be right. I've dedicated a year of my life to this organization at least, and more than a year, including all the volunteer hours, all the years I put in at school, what you are all doing right now, which is incredible work. There's evidence that I care about this organization. Check out my LinkedIn, and you'll see these credentials. Dr. Cornelius, AIS, NOMA, Associate AIA, and I'm really just starting out here, so I'm going to get a lot more than that. I didn't make any of these up, by the way. They're all very real. So just come with me on a journey for a second. Let's imagine a future where I have all these just incredible credentials. I've maxed out the characters on my LinkedIn name long ago. And when I go to conferences, people are dazzled by the 38 lapel pins of all the organizations that I have and all the credentials that I have. But you have to ask yourself now, what have I accomplished? What have I done to better the world? You suddenly realize that the world, our community, our society, whatever, is not really any better than back when I was just Scott Cornelius. So this is pretty nihilistic, right? Starting out on a low note, just like Shannon's speech. Interesting. Why am I telling you all this? It seems kind of dumb given the fact that we're all at an AIS conference right now, and that you as AIS members can use the AIS credential after your name, and that is a really valid and useful tool for proving your association with something bigger than yourself and with making those connections. I mean, I already have those 3 credentials after my name. Many of you probably see me, and I once saw myself as an organization guy. I'd never had the best grades or anything. I was never the top performer in studio, but I've always been the most involved. Probably some of the OSU people can account for that. I've always been the one with the most LinkedIn connections, that kind of stuff. The reason I'm telling you all this is because I want to communicate what I came to realize. All of these organizations, these letters that you see up here, the applications and the registrations and the committees and these conferences, they don't matter at all, not in and of themselves. What matters is the ideas behind them and the communities behind them. That driving force brings, or in some cases once brought, a group of dedicated people together to make change that they believe in. This idea may seem pretty obvious when you first hear it. The mission is what matters, not the bureaucracy, that kind of thing. But when you really consider what I'm saying, this fact can start to free you from this honestly sometimes ridiculous, restricting system and culture that we're a part of. We didn't create it, we were handed it. Not only was it handed to us, it was handed to us with a note that said, we know this is broken, you fix it. Sometimes, a lot of the time, the change we believe in, the change you believe in, isn't getting accomplished by these systems. So I saw one of these Facebook-style memes a while back. You may have seen or read this somewhere, that seems to me to be a pretty accurate representation of the roadblock we've come up against here. It's one of those inspirational, like, your mom posted it, memes. It's a pretty sensible reaction, honestly, to this messy, broken, confusing system we're all coming up against going into and leaving school. So it says, my anthro professor told me, you all have a little bit of I want to save the world in you, and that's why you're here in college or why you're here at the Grassroots conference. I want you to know it's okay if you only save one person, and it's okay if that person is you. So again, that might be an old quote, you might have heard it, might be a little bit over memed and cliche now, but it really resonated with me when I first saw it. This isn't specifically about architecture or about architecture students, but it applies to us really well. At its core, architecture has always been a design discipline, not necessarily a humanitarian one, even though it's always needed to be. Just a few examples of this distinction. Old buildings, yes, but Art Deco in itself is a great example of sacrificing human and environmental needs for design. By the way, the Empire State Building underwent a green retrofit over the last decade, so that's good at least. This issue obviously persists in newer buildings. I love Louis Kahn's work, but let's be honest, horrible for the environment. And he wasn't a great guy himself either. Up through buildings that are pretty new or still being constructed. That's right, I used 2 Frank Gehry buildings for examples. And yeah, we gave you some books. You can do what you want with them. I'm pretty sure that in one permutation or another, we're all very interested in design. For many of us, design is an activity and art that is why we started this journey into architecture. The interesting thing is that almost as an unintentional byproduct of the unique structure of architectural education and the necessity when becoming a designer to really focus on the world around you, to pay attention to how it's arranged, how it makes you feel, how it affects you positively or negatively. Designers are some of the most adept people at seeing the flaws in the world around them. I'm not just talking about the built environment, I'm talking about society at large. So that almost curse to look up, to pay attention, to see what's going on, identify those issues, that gives rise to a little bit of I want to save the world in all of us. Even though that might not be what we set out to do when we chose architecture as our discipline. So, a quick review of what we've established so far. 1, my speech is not about 17th century skyscrapers that were demolished in the 30s, but we have to still memorize obscure little facts about them. Again, my minor is architectural history and theory, so I can say that. 2, the system we've been handed is confusing, is overwhelming, and it's broken. And 3, we all, the people in this room, have the skills to notice what changes to be made in our world, and we have the motivation to change them. So given that calculus, I was never good at math at all. Again, not the grades guy. But what we need to know now is how to change anything, given the system that we have. To quote Dan Hart from last night, and Archimedes, if you give me a long enough lever and a solid place to stand, I can move the world. But what is that lever? It's extremely overwhelming to come up against all these issues. Everything that's wrong with the world, I'm not going to list these issues, you know what they are, and consider where to even start fixing them when operating through the established systems. And I want to tell you, really truthfully, that the process of even considering how to do this, coming up against all these things, can be damaging to your mental health, to your personal goals and ambitions. And that's a real consideration you need to make when you take this into account. So yes, first save yourself. And it's okay to just save yourself. But I am going to put a little bit more pressure on you than the anthro professor did, because I believe nobody in here is going to save the world, but I do believe that you're all here because you can save pieces of it. So then, again, the issue at hand is the systems, and how we, the people in this room, can work through them to change the things that we believe in, and starting with choosing which of the things we believe in to work on. That is perhaps the hardest question to answer. All these issues facing our world, how do we choose something to change? What about the things you're missing, all the stuff that's slipping through the cracks, falling through your fingers? I'll be honest with you, I haven't quite figured that one out myself, and I'm not going to stand up here and give you advice on things I just don't know. My only thought on the subject is this: to make all the change that needs to be made for us to come together as a school or a community or a profession or a society, we have to trust one another. I have a tendency, like Shannon, to want to have all the control, Surprise. Y'all didn't know that. So I can make sure that things are done in the way that I think they should be done. One of the hardest lessons I've learned this year is that if you try to control everything, all of those things that you have your hand in that you are controlling is going to pull you apart. Trust in others to do good work, even if they won't do it how you would do it. Be honest about your fears and concerns, and crucially, this is one of the philosophies I always try to stick to. Some of you may have heard me say this before. Don't get involved. Don't start something unless you believe you can change it for the better. Don't do it just to do it. You don't have the skill set to change everything. So work to be self-aware enough to release control where someone else could do it better than you. That's not just okay, that's extremely admirable. So, that was hard work, but we've chosen something that we want to change, and we believe we can change. Again, how? These established systems I keep talking about are like a horribly tangled ball of string lights. I love string lights. If you don't know, you can stop by the AIS office sometimes and see them hanging around.
Yes.
And your challenge is to make something beautiful and functional out of this. There are a lot of theories of change out there that you could perhaps apply to this situation. And I am leading into my own. Mine is represented by string lights, so it's going to be the best one. First off, as I see it, there are three types of change. And to make real change in any one area, you need to accomplish all three of them. So we have policy change. This is implemented by changing or creating policies and documents, whether they're binding or service guidelines. I didn't use the word political intentionally because of the implications behind that word. So for example, things we do in the AIS, learning and teaching culture policies, these documents that of themselves are meaningless, but once you create them, once you believe in them, once you get others to believe in them, they can start to make real change. You knew I'd get a mention in on learning and teaching culture policies, didn't you? Next is educational change. So this one is implemented through organized efforts to educate others, especially the next generation, which right now is all of you, about why and how these changes need to be made. So actual curricula, getting this out to people in an organized way. And finally, we have cultural change. This is implemented mainly through conversations and modeled actions. This, more than the first two, requires moral and logical buy-in from the community. So this is a really hard one to grasp. Town halls, tough conversations. It's hard to tell if this is done. It's hard to tell if you're doing it right. But it's the most impactful one by far. So we have three types of change we need to hit. What are the options for untangling the ball of lights? All this red tape and bureaucracy that has infused nearly every established system that we could make change through. Again, I believe we have three options. The first is pretty simple. Go around the system. Why do you need string lights? They're pretty, but use a lamp. Light up the room. This requires a lot of grassroots movements on your part, so a DIY type of change, if you will. I know some of you just said I won't, but bear with me. This is really how the AIS was started. Long ago in the 80s, a group of students decided the organization they were a part of didn't serve their interests, that the system they were a part of wouldn't allow them to make the change and advocate for themselves effectively. They broke off and formed a group, and they called it the AIS. So don't be afraid to get out there, to take responsibility, and start your own thing. Second option, we can break the system down. So cut up the string lights. Cut them where necessary, untangle at all costs. You can see the obvious potential drawbacks to this system. As with the system, after cutting and forging completely new paths, by rewiring, doing whatever you need to do to put it back together, you'll need to, do a lot of work to make it functional again, something that works. This is going to enable you to rearrange the pieces, make something completely different. It's an obviously aggressive approach, but sometimes aggression and a certain irreverence for the past and for tradition is necessary to make real change. Finally, you can work to fix the system. Take time, meticulously untangle each knot, convince each piece to get organized and work like it should. This takes a lot of nurturing, and it really requires you to dedicate yourself to the system, the organization, whatever it is, even though you don't believe in it as it currently operates. You're really working through the system in this one, and you have to dedicate fully to the philosophy I mentioned earlier. only get involved with something if you believe that you personally can leave it better than you found it. If there's someone else that you think can do it better, let them do it better. You don't have the skill set to change everything. So I really do believe that this year we have left the AIS better than we found it, thanks to the incredible work of our national office staff. So to Sarah, the Sarahs again, to Aaron, my past president, who did an incredible job and is still doing an incredible job, who loved that monuments tour. Yes. To Ashley Ash, our interim executive director. To the board of directors, each of whom worked so hard and tirelessly over the course of this year. Our committees and task forces, many of you were probably serving on those, and all of you on the ground at our chapters. And thanks especially to my incredible, energetic, and passionate partner through this crazy journey, Shannon DeFranza. She never stopped working for all of you for a single moment. I'm pretty sure that she was writing emails and starting new chapters in her sleep. So I know that this is my speech here, but can we give another round of applause for Shannon? This organization would not be what it is right now without her. So coming out of the pandemic, this year is focused pretty heavily on the AIS internally, on ourselves, on our membership, how to stabilize the organization and ensure that it's around for 66 more years to bring people like you together and give them an incredible platform, like literally the platform that I'm standing on right now. The work we've all done will enable the future for generations of leaders like all of you to focus externally. How can the AIS leave the world better than we found it? I turned over the reins of the presidency to Cooper a couple days ago, and right now I want to turn over the reins of this organization and the change that it's going to make to all of you. So I'm going to leave you with a quote from a book that I love, The Old Man and the Sea. Now is not the time to think of what you do not have. Think of what you can do with what there is. Thank you very much. Surprise, I'm still here. Okay, well, what an emotional journey we just all went through together. I don't cry a lot, people, but when Shannon was talking, I was there. So I get the honor now of moving into the next portion of our agenda, which is the presentation of the Presidential Citation. So the Presidential Citation, if you don't know what that is the highest honor that the AIS gives. It is just an incredible thing to award someone with. It means that they, more than anyone else almost, contributed to the organization or to the president themselves in some really meaningful way. So this isn't cheating because I can do what I want. I'm going to give out 2 presidential citations today, and I don't think either of these people know that I'm giving it to them, but they could have guessed. So, first of all, I would like to welcome up to the stage, I believe if she's here, Ashley Ash. She is so mad at me for calling her up to the stage. So Ashley, if you don't know, was our interim executive director this past year. She came into the organization 7 years ago, is that right? 6.5. Served in a variety of places within the organization, and we were going through a really tumultuous time, and she stepped in and took that position when it's not necessarily something that she was going for, not something that was within the experience that she had, but she did the most incredible job. She served as a mentor to Shannon and I so much. She's like an older sister to me. I would never have gotten through this past year without her. Aaron and Sarah can speak to that as well. They probably wouldn't have gotten through their years without her either. So I want to read really quickly what this beautiful presidential citation says. So it's to Ashley Ash for more than 7 years of diligent and inspiring service to the AIS and its members, for tirelessly serving as a great role model, mentor, and friend to AIS leaders, for taking on and excelling in the role of interim executive director during a period of unprecedented hardship for the organization and its leadership, and for not only holding the national office and this organization together through her compassion, empathy, guidance, but for advancing the operation and mission of the AIS through her great skill, talent, and dedication. Thank you, Ashley. She whispered something mean as she walked away, but that's okay. Next up, I would like to invite Sarah Takatatsu. She's literally already crying. Y'all know who Sarah is, right?
Yeah.
Sarah has a lot of titles. She's the, oh my goodness, past vice president of the American Institute of Architecture Students, past West Quad director, past chapter president. She served this past year as our interim director of membership and marketing, again in a time of unprecedented hardship and chaos for the AIS. She stepped into that role right after her vice presidency, which is not something that a lot of people do. And probably shouldn't. She did an amazing job, and she's serving right now as our strategic advisor, which is a role that she made up herself just to stay with the AIS and make sure we were all okay. So again, thank you, Sarah. Again, like a sister to me, and I wouldn't have been able to get through this year without her. So I'm going to read this one too. Sarah Takatatsu, for her years of service to the AIS at the local, regional, national, and international levels, for her ceaseless dedication to advocating for students and to improving the experience of AIS members and leaders, for maintaining the important traditions of the AIS while recognizing and making the needed change to advance the organization, including the training and support of new and future AIS leaders, and for taking on and revolutionizing the roles of interim director of membership and marketing and strategic advisor during a period of unprecedented hardship for the organization and its leadership. Thank you, Sarah.
My thumb was in that one.
As I said,